Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to
Pakistan has a new government and a new Prime Minister, Imran Khan, but already there's a rocky start to relations with two key countries, India and the United States. How will the country's new leadership reshape its foreign policy? We speak to the new Foreign Minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, who's been here at the UN General Assembly in New York, about his options for the world and the region, here on Talk to Al Jazeera. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Foreign Minister of Pakistan, thank you for speaking to Al Jazeera. It's not been long since you've become Foreign Minister again. Let me ask you about the challenges of this moment. A brand new administration, and yet this time it's a political party that's never governed before, and a Prime Minister that's never held political office before. What are the challenges of that, and what possibly are the advantages too?
Well, there are challenges and there are expectations as well. The challenges are that the economy is not in very good shape. Institutions that deliver, a lot of them have been compromised. Corruption was on the rise, and people plundered and stacked money abroad. People lost faith in institutions. To restore confidence is a big challenge. To restore the economy is a big challenge. To reform institutions is a big challenge. In Imran Khan, they feel we have a person who enjoys credibility, reputation, and he's a figure, a national hero, and they feel when he decides to do something, he delivers.
What do you say to those that claim there is a deep state in Pakistan, and in Pakistan that deep state wears a uniform, and it's the army that this time around decided to back Imran? That's an allegation that's been made of some of your party's opponents and by some who've studied the election, which some have said probably wasn't a completely fair playing field. That was the initial verdict of the EU.
How do you justify your failure? You have to blame someone. A. B. What do the international observers who were there? What did they say? They were there. There were people from the Commonwealth. There were people from the European Union, and they observed the entire process and gave an opinion. And the opinion was the elections were free, fair, and credible.
One of the problems you face now is you've made a lot of promises, but you don't have a huge majority. That makes things a little difficult, doesn't it?
It does, to an extent that for legislation you need a majority, and we do not have a majority in the Senate right now. So what we need to do is build consensus, and hopefully a couple of years down the line we will have rerun for the Senate, and hopefully the numbers will change.
Your party's only been in power for a short period, so it is very early days, but first impressions count. It's fair to say there have been a few stumbles, haven't there? For example, selling off the government cars. You raised not as much money, the government, as it hoped to raise, only about a tenth of the amount of money that you hoped to raise. And there's been some ridicule that the Prime Minister, after doing that, travels around by helicopter.
To begin with, selling cars was not generating money. It was conveying a message, and the message was austerity. The message was to live within your means. Traveling by helicopter wasn't extravagance, it was a security requirement. And if you calculate, if you depute, if you look at the people deployed for security, if you look at the inconvenience caused to public, when you stop traffic and stuff like that, ultimately that's a better option to do. And it doesn't happen every day, it's just once a week.
And of course, one of the leaders that you served in the past, Benazir Bhutto, was killed while travelling the streets of Pakistan. Before we move on to some of the foreign challenges, to just revisit that for a moment, do you now think you know who killed her?
Well,
Do you have your suspicions?
let the party that I used to be in speak for that. They claim they know it, but they don't share it. So I will let them speak for who killed her. It's unfortunate the way she went. She could have contributed significantly to the country. Quite a dynamic personality. It's unfortunate we lost her.
Let's move to relations with America. And if you don't mind, I'm going to start where you left when you were last foreign minister, because you resigned, and you resigned over the decision to let a CIA contractor who shot 2 men in Lahore not be prosecuted. Can you explain, go back there and say why you found that incident so wrong?
What they were claiming, he was not. They wanted diplomatic immunity. He wasn't a diplomat. So what they were asking for was unfair. And all I was saying, the documents do not justify what you're demanding. So the position I took later, I was vindicated. He was not a diplomat.
But do you think it shows something about the way the US has been treating Pakistan over the last 17 years since 9/11? We understand why they engaged themselves in the region, but did they respect Pakistan's sovereignty during that period?
Well, history tells us that powers at their height look at things differently. Their behavior is different. And the US, being a global power, they expect special treatment.
The relationship between Pakistan and the US, I think you probably would agree, has been, for a long time, somewhat complicated. But it seems to be particularly strained since President Trump took office. He put out a tweet in January. The United States has foolishly given Pakistan more than $33 billion in aid over the last 15 years, and they've given us nothing but lies and deceit. That is a difficult thing now for you to repair. Does he have a point there?
I think if he had seen what Pakistan has done, if he had traveled to that area and to the region and seen the challenges that we face, and we faced fighting terrorism, the sacrifice, the human loss, the economic sacrifice, he could have perhaps appreciated and been more sensitive to some of our concerns. We have moved on. We've recognized the challenge, and we've contributed to safety. Mainland USA today is safe because many of our youngsters and officers and soldiers sacrifice themselves.
Absolutely true. Huge numbers of casualties. But there are some who claim that some in your army, some in your intelligence, the ISI, were playing a double game. They were helping the Taliban. They were helping Osama bin Laden. True?
They were helping their own country. They were helping overcome a situation which was not of their creation. Who were these people? Who supported them? Who trained them? we forget history. And at times we overlook that trends change, people that you support. Some of the people who are called extremists, weren't they invited to the US? Weren't they entertained in the White House? So friends change, circumstances change. We were just defending and protecting ourselves. We've undertaken operations in the country to cleanse ourselves from elements that were not friendly or were creating situations for Pakistan and beyond.
Were these your friends in the past, though? I mean, it's called the Quetta Shura, the Taliban command. That is in a city in Pakistan, Quetta. Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan. Mullah Omar was killed in Pakistan. Were you in the past treating them as friends and giving them a safe haven? And what's your new government's policy now?
Well, our policy is very clear. We do not want safe havens, and what we've gone through, we've undertaken a very serious effort to cleanse ourselves and to clear the areas. The different operations that the army has undertaken have cleared those areas that were unthinkable of visiting. You can come and travel there. You can come and see for yourself. See how life has returned, how people have gone back, how there are sports activities taking place, how schools are being rebuilt, an area that where at one stage it was felt that the writ of the government doesn't exist. In those very areas have now been merged with the KP province. Look at the areas that were governed under a special law are now being governed by similar laws. They have been brought into the mainstream.
Do you think the timing was unfortunate? You had the Trump administration coming into power, not really initially focusing much on building foreign relationships. It took a long time because they, I think, frankly, didn't expect to be elected. It took a long time for them to reach out to people around the world. And at the same time, by the time they were getting to know countries around the world, you had the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif removed from power. It seems to be a rather unfortunate set of timings that when you could have reached out to the Trump administration, you sort of had a caretaker type administration in place until the elections that have brought your party to power.
Well, Nawaz Sharif was not taken out of power. There was a Supreme Court judgment. He was held accountable, and nobody threw him out. Even when he left, when he was convicted, the party continued. The party was still in office. The Prime Minister who succeeded him was his hand-picked Prime Minister. The ministers were the same. Punjab, the largest province of the country, had his brother governing that province.
But what I'm saying is, do you not think because of all of what happened, the relationship with the US got neglected by the previous government?
Well, the previous government for 4.5 years had no foreign minister. What was stopping them?
The Prime Minister was doing the job as well, wasn't he?
Well, you see, Prime Minister supposedly was doing the job, but Prime Ministers are Prime Ministers, and they have so much on their plate. They cannot focus on events that require immediate attention. So a lot of things were ignored, and a lot of relationships got affected.
And one of those is the US relationship. You've told me how things have changed, but President Trump hasn't got the message. Congress hasn't got the message. The Pentagon hasn't got the message. Congress has withdrawn $500 million in aid funds. The Pentagon's cancelled $300 million in military assistance. How do you get the message to Washington?
We are 1 month old. It takes time. You need engagement. The only high-level interaction we've had is just one meeting with the Secretary of State when Secretary Pompeo visited Islamabad on his way to Delhi. That was the first engagement that this government had, and I think it was a good meeting. The conversation that he had with the Prime Minister on telephone was a good conversation. And the meeting he had with me and then with the leadership, the civil and the military leadership, I was part of that, was very encouraging. And the fact that he is going to meet me on the 2nd in Washington shows that they're thinking of perhaps revisiting their approach to Pakistan.
Does Pakistan now have other options than just the US relationship? Can you have, I mean, Russia, for example, and China, where you have had a very long friendship, but growing ties and growing economic ties? Do you need the US in the way you perhaps did in the past?
Well, we want the US to be friends with Pakistan. We recognize the US is an important global power, and they will continue to be a military, technological, and economic power in the foreseeable future. Well, they are looking at different options. They're looking at new friends in the region, and we do have friends who've been consistent, very valuable. China's one of them. There are others who feel and recognize how important, how strategically located Pakistan is, and do understand Pakistan's importance. So we are not alone, and everyone has options.
I know you're not the finance minister, you're the foreign minister, but is one of those options a loan from the IMF? And how do you square, if that is an option, the words you've just said and the words from your Prime Minister? He said, "We've formed a bad habit of living on loans and aids from other country. No country can prosper like this." Do those words mean an IMF loan is ruled out or not?
No. That does not mean that. What it means is that we today have accumulated so much debt that bulk of our resources are exhausted servicing that debt, and we need to do things differently. But yes, there are financial institutions that bail out countries when they are in a difficult situation, and we haven't ruled out coming to the IMF.
In terms of relations with India, early days, you and your Prime Minister have reached out to the Indians. It seems you have been rebuffed. You must be disappointed.
What we did was, we thought made sense. Two neighbors with outstanding issues, atomic powers. How do you fix things? War is no option. There is no military solution. The only solution is a dialogue. And the priority of this government is, we want to fix our internal challenges. We want to fix the economy. We want job creation. We want stability. We want peace. We want to concentrate on the Western side. And if we want to concentrate on the Western side, we want ease on the Eastern side. So we reached out and wanted to engage. And the Prime Minister, in his first address on the 26th of July, very clearly said, "You take one step towards peace, we will take two." very clear message.
Are you disappointed that that initial message was rebuffed, or do you think we're already in the Indian election cycle?
I think Indian internal domestic politics prevailed, and they do realize what we are saying makes sense and is a big element within India. Look at the criticism that the Indian government is facing from their own people, from their intelligentsia, from their own media. And a lot of people think that it wasn't a wise decision. But that's their decision. There is no other option. If there is an option, spell it out.
I'd like to end by talking about another of your key neighbours. We've already touched on it, and that's Afghanistan. There does now seem to be a US appetite for talks with the Taliban. There were some talks, there was a brief truce during Eid. How do you see these developments, and what do you think should be Pakistan's role in this?
Well, Prime Minister Imran Khan, for a long time, has been saying this, that there is no military solution to Afghanistan. The only solution is a negotiated political settlement, an inclusive approach. After all, Taliban are Afghans. And if you want peace and stability in Afghanistan, you need to incorporate them, bring them into the mainstream. What you need to do is convince them that violence is not the right way of going about. Give up arms, come to the negotiating table, and play your role, within the system. Recognize the constitution and play a role.
And what model for that would you
political
have?
role.
Because, I mean, the Afghan government have tried their own talks. You had talks last year that took place in Pakistan. You have a Taliban mission, you could call it that, in Qatar. You have the US's own approach. You have the Russians also making suggestions. How do you bring all these efforts together? And the second part of my question, are you sure the Taliban really want to negotiate when they're doing well on the battlefield?
Well, I think if there's enough incentive provided, why shouldn't they negotiate? Why shouldn't they? I think they also do realize that things have changed within Afghanistan over the last 16, 17 years, and they just cannot run over and just get to Kabul and just go and take over the country. That's no longer possible. So there's a new realization everywhere. I think the Afghan government also recognizes and realizes that there are areas where they have a considerable amount of influence. There are districts that they control. You got to recognize that and accept that. So there's a new realization that is evolving, a new convergence that is in the making, and that is, let's give peace a chance, and let's give dialogue and reconciliation a chance.
Events since 9/11 in Afghanistan have also affected the destiny of Pakistan. If you could have peace in Afghanistan, what could it mean for Pakistan?
Oh, a lot. Stability, economic growth, employment opportunities, and fixing things that have been ignored for a while. Fixing our internal institutions, changing the way Pakistan has been run, the way Pakistan has been governed, utilizing our resources on human development. The most valuable asset of the country, the people. We haven't invested enough in education, in health, drinking water. So sort of reprioritizing things.
Foreign Minister Qureshi, thank you very much for speaking to Al Jazeera. Thank you.
Thank you.